Who are you most looking forward to seeing tonight?
I'm actually excited to see our three finalists, Dave, Kira, and Damon. It's going to be a terrific night.
What are you wearing?
How dare you? Fashion kerchief, Valentino. And since we are only streaming tonight, and you only need to see me from the waist up, shorts, well-worn, shoes, Adidas.
Everyone wants to know, were the ghosts of Thurber House invited tonight?
Yes, some of them are running the tech board. Should be a fun night.
I've got a question. It's either the ghosts are mad or the show is starting.
Welcome to the Thurber Prize for American Humor 2020 Rewind. Tonight's program is dedicated to the memory of Thurber House co-founder Judy Garrow. We honor Judy's legacy of service to Thurber House, her community, and as a longtime judge for the Thurber Prize.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Lathan, Executive Director for Thurber House, and this is Ann Tevel, Deputy Director of Thurber House. We're thrilled to have you here with us tonight for the Thurber Prize for American Humor 2020 Rewind. Yeah, it's been a long year, and while we couldn't do the prize in person last year, we're back with the latest, greatest format everyone is definitely craving more of, online programming. That's right. We're excited to finally get to celebrate our 2020 finalists, and even though we can't be in person this year, we have plenty of fun surprises planned tonight. For instance, we're on our way to the winner's house to surprise them with the news and a comically large check right now. Yeah, to be honest, this check was not easy to get in the overhead bin, considering I am also carrying the coveted Thurber Prize. Lots of tears, tears, and paper cuts, like lots. Yeah, you're seriously messed up, and it's all in a day's work. Right. Speaking of a day's work, Lori, I wonder what our finalists get up to in a day. Funny you mentioned that, Anne. Throughout the evening, we'll actually be showing you exclusive clips showing a day in the life of each of our three funny finalists and hearing an exclusive reading from each one. In fact, let's get right to it with our first finalist in alphabetical order. Here's a day in the life of the legendary Dave Barry.
Hi, I'm Dave Barry, and I've been asked by the folks at the Thurber Prize to talk about a day in my life as a humor writer. It's pretty exciting. I come back to my office, which is where I am now, and I sit here all day trying to think of jokes. That's my day. How do I think of the jokes? I have a system, an outline I use. I don't want to give away trade secrets, but I'm going to show you how I do it, how I construct a humor essay. I go by this outline I'm about to show you. You might want to take notes if you're interested in writing humor professionally. That's basically what I do all day. So far today, I'm still on the first one, joke. So it's me. This is my day. I'm sitting here. I have my guitar there that I never play. With me, sometimes that's my desk where I don't sit ever. That's where my wife sits. There's the pool that nobody ever swims in because we live in Florida. This is my dog, Lucy. Lucy, hi girl. Can you look at the? No, there she is. Lucy. So sometimes Lucy will get up, and that's probably the high point of the day. It's Lucy walking around. And so there you have it. That's where the magic happens here in my life, my wacky, crazy, fun-filled life as a humor writer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Barry, and I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, Lessons from Lucy, The Simple Joys of an Old Happy Dog. This excerpt is about getting old, which is actually what the whole book is about, but mainly this excerpt. Getting old sucks. Oh, sure, some people claim it doesn't suck, and by some people, I mean ARP. ARP, as you are probably aware, is the last sound you make before you die. ARP! Hurry, doctor, he's ARPing over here. But ARP is also an abbreviation for American Association of Retired Persons standing in line ahead of you, demanding a discount on every freaking thing. ARP is a powerful lobbying group representing the interests of senior citizens. Like if a member of Congress even thinks about cutting Social Security benefits, an elite ARP tactical assault lobbying squad will descend on the congressperson's office at a slow rate of speed and wave their catheters around in a threatening manner until the congressperson sees the light. I have no problem with that aspect of ARP. I've been paying into the Social Security system since the French and Indian War, and I want to cash in. Yes, I'm aware that Social Security is basically a giant Ponzi scheme, and that we baby boomers, as we retire in vast numbers and start collecting from the system, will be imposing an enormous, unfair, and potentially ruinous financial burden on younger generations. I view this as payback for what the younger generations have done to music. But I part company with ARP on the question of whether or not aging sucks. ARP's official position is that it does not. The CEO of AARP, Joy Ann Jenkins, has a book heavily promoted by ARP titled Disrupt Aging, A Bold New Path to Living Your Best Life at Every Age. In this book, according to ARP, Jenkins encourages us to rethink the negative stories we tell ourselves and each other about aging. ARP has a whole Disrupt Aging campaign going. The message is that society should abandon the stereotype that older people are crotchety, clueless, doddering old farts. Quote, enough with Dottie Driver and goofy grandma memes, states ARP. The over 50 set is running corporations and ruling Supreme Courts. Why is it still acceptable to group all elders as demented dimwits unable to use a TV remote? ARP apparently believes that there are Supreme Courts and that senior citizens are ruling them. Age isn't a punchline, asserts ARP. It's about growth. You aren't too old for anything. Oh, really, ARP? I beg to differ. Those of us drifting into our 70s and beyond are definitely too old for some things. Public nudity is the obvious example. Some years ago, my family and another family, both with young children, were on a Caribbean cruise that stopped for a day in St. Martin. The island is divided into two sectors, a Dutch sector and a French sector. The Dutch sector is known for nightlife, by which I mean drinking. People on the Dutch side start engaging in nightlife as early as breakfast. The French sector is known for nude beaches. That's the weird thing about the French. If you go to Paris, you'll find that everybody is dressed quite formally, at least by American standards. If you walk into a Paris restaurant attired in shorts and sneakers, the French will look at you as though you are wearing a hefty trash bag. But when these same French people get to a beach, they immediately remove all their clothes and stroll around openly flaunting their legumes. So anyway, we were in this St. Martin French beach with our small children, and no sooner did we settle into our beach chairs when a herd of French people commenced parading past us stark naked. Some of these people were not unattractive to look at. These were your younger people. But the older naked people made you yearn for a total solar eclipse. There was a lot of drooping. The men especially were prone to extreme droopage in the groinular region, which as a human you do not want to see. There was one elderly man, I will never be able to completely erase this image from my brain, who was strolling toward us with his scrotal appendage dangling so low that a crab could easily have reached up a claw and grabbed it, although tragically this did not happen. So no matter what ARP says, you can definitely be too old for public nudity. Also, if you're an older person who is not Mick Jagger, you are too old for skinny jeans. As for the unfortunate stereotype that older people are bad drivers, I have an honest question for ARP. How do you think this stereotype got started? If you are an ARP official reading this or listening to this, I invite you to come to Florida, rent a car, and spend some time cruising around communities where there are numerous elderly drivers. You will find yourself routinely stuck behind motorists who never, under any circumstances, including driving on the interstate, exceed 12 miles per hour, slowing to 1 mile per hour or less when they approach a potentially hazardous situation such as a green traffic light, which could at any moment, with no warning, turn an entirely different color. Commercial airline pilots are legally required to retire when they reach age 65. At that point, they're probably still all perfectly competent, but they have to stop anyway. Why do you suppose this is, ARP? If aging is about growth, why not let these pilots keep right on growing and flying large planes into their 70s, their 80s, even their 90s? Imagine it. Pilot announces, "Folks, we've reached a comfortable cruising altitude, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the fasten seatbelt sign." All of a sudden, the engine shut down. The plane immediately starts losing altitude. Pilot, "Okay, folks, apparently we've begun our descent into Chicago." Which leads us to the unfair stereotype that older people are confused by technology. Wherever did that crazy notion come from, ARP officials? Let me suggest a possible answer based on my experience as an author. When I have a new book out, I'll usually travel around the country making appearances in bookstores, where I'll give a short talk and then answer audience questions about my work, such as, "Do you know Carl Hyacin?" and "What is Stephen King really like?" After that, I sign books for people who've bought them. Often people want to take pictures, which is of course very flattering. And over the years, I've posed for thousands of pictures taken by people of all ages, almost always using cell phones. I have observed that young people and old people use a very different picture-taking technique. Here is the young person technique. 1, hold up the phone. 2, take the picture. Here is the old person technique. 1, hold up the phone. 2, frown at the screen for about 30 seconds. 3, say, "Wait, I think it's on Google." 4, stab at the screen for a while with a forefinger. 5, hold the phone up again and say, "Okay, smile." 6, frown and say, "Wait, I think it's making a video." 7, stab at the screen some more. 8, hold up the phone and say, "Okay, smile." 9, frown and say, "Wait, it took a picture of me." 10, hand the phone to a younger person who takes the actual picture. I could present many more examples of seniors struggling with technology, but I believe I proved my point, which is that ARP, an organization for which I have the utmost respect, is full of shit. Aging is not growth, unless you are referring to nasal hair. Thank you.
Thurber House is a nonprofit literary arts center, James Thurber Museum, historic landmark and gathering place for readers, writers, and artists of all ages, where laughter, learning, and literature meet. In addition to the Thurber Prize for American Humor, we host a range of author events featuring both top nationally and locally beloved authors, writing workshops for children, teens, and adults, writer residencies, and more. We are based in the restored 1873 home of humorist, cartoonist, author, playwright, and journalist James Thurber. Known for his quirky and relatable characters and themes, Thurber rose to become one of the foremost American humorists of the 20th century, with a career spanning short stories, illustrations, modern commentary, fables, children's fantasy, and letters. Notably, many of Thurber's drawings, which often featured dogs and family life, and his imaginative stories first appeared in the New Yorker magazine. Some of James Thurber's famous tales include The Night the Ghost Got In, The Dog That Bit People, The Night the Bed Fell, The Catbird Seat, and The Unicorn in the Garden. And yes, that one movie they made with Ben Stiller a few years ago. What was that? The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. The annual Thurber Prize for American Humor is one of the most prestigious recognitions of humor writing today. A panel of seasoned judges selects 3 finalists from a short list of distinguished semi-finalists. The winner receives $5,000, a commemorative plaque, and bragging rights on Twitter. Past finalists include Bob Newhart, Bill Bryson, Mike Birbiglia, Annabelle Gurwitch, John Hodgman, Sloane Crosley, and many others. Past winners include Trevor Noah, Simon Rich, Patricia Lockwood, David Sedaris, The Onion writers, Jon Stewart and The Daily Show writers, and more of your favorite humorists. If you're enjoying yourself this evening and/or know Thurber House in the real world, or are new to us altogether, please consider making a donation. We can always use the generous support of the community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Meg Brown, and it is my pleasure to introduce one of the authors in this year's Flip the Page, Central Ohio's Teen Literary Journal. Flip the Page is written, edited, and produced by teens, and our way of offering a publishing opportunity for these talented teen writers in our community. Our reader tonight is Tommy Marino. He is an 11th grade student at Bishop Watterson High School. He will be reading his poem, The Arrival, that will be featured in the 2021 edition of Flip the Page. Take it away, Tommy.
They plummeted into the deep, dark oval, sliding across the slippery surface, almost like a carnival. They rejoiced, gracious to take part in this festival. But soon, their lively shouts turned into groans of disapproval. The surface began to scorch, like a day of estival. A struggle ensued as they searched for reprieval. But there was no escape. This was a game of survival. They begged for mercy, crying out in a regular interval. No respite was given, however. This was a punishment from pre-medieval. One by one they were singed. No chance for revival. No hope nor prayer of removal. Now they were all deceased. No one left to outrival. Suddenly, there was a stir from beyond, a sudden upheaval. Cascading onto a silver plate, the eggs have made their arrival.
It just feels so good to travel again. But there's a lot going on here, but it's just so freeing. Oh, jeez.
Stay tuned. We're learning more about our 3 finalists and getting even closer to revealing the Thurber Prize winner. It's time for another peek at the finalist day in the life, the wonderful Jane Buxton.
Hi, I'm Jane Buxton, and this is my boss and fellow Thurber fan, Ewok. We are at my home in Washington State, where it is sunny 500 days of the year. I wrote my novel Hollow Kingdom in this house, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my creative process. Every day I spring out of my bed, filled with energy and suffused with ideas, and I float gracefully down the stairs. Ideas just flowing to me. Since the pandemic, I feel like there's kind of been a big change to my writing routine. I normally it's just me and my animals in the house, and now my husband is home all the time. It's nice. I don't really go anywhere else because of the pandemic, apart from the bird feed store. Not to get you too excited here. I also go to my favorite indie bookstores, and I buy plants to put into the yard to appease my bird brothel. And I also take Ewok for several visits to his favorite pet stores, mostly to satisfy his fans. There are a great many of them. I am extraordinarily honored to be nominated for the Thurber Award. I still can't believe it. I am such a fan of Dave and Damon, so to be a nominee with them is quite magical and affirming. I feel that as somebody who is held together with humor, I feel like humor has been a life raft for me, perhaps especially in the last year. And I hope that this is inspiring to other humorists, that even an eccentric bird-loving animal nut who wrote about a crazy crow could write something that resonated and could be up for such a prestigious award. Hi, I'm Jane Buxton, and I am going to read from my novel, Hollow Kingdom. I wanted to read the first chapter and then skip ahead and read a tiny bit of another chapter that's from a different point of view. Chapter 1. ST, a small craftsman home in Ravenna, Seattle, Washington, USA. I should have known something was dangerously wrong long before I did. How do you miss something so critical? There were signs that were slow as sap, that amber lava that swallows up a disease-kissed evergreen. Slow as a rattlesnake as it bleeds toward you, painting the grass with belly scales. But sometimes you only see the signs once you're on the highest branch of realization. One minute, everything was normal. Big Jim and I were playing in the yard. We live together, you see. It's a platonic relationship with a zesty sprinkle of symbiosis. I get the perks of living with an employed electrician in a decent neighborhood of Seattle, and he gets his own private live-in funny man. Winner, winner, chicken dinner, which so happens to be a favorite of mine. So, Big Jim and I were in the yard. He had a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer in hand, classic Big Jim, and he was stooping intermittently to yank out a weed the size of a labradoodle. Things grow heartily in our state of Washington. Emerald moss, honey crisp apples, sweet cherries, big dreams, caffeine addiction, and acute passive aggression. We also legalized pot, to which Big Jim likes to poignantly screech, "Fuck yeah!" Where was I? Right. A summer evening glaze of gold varnish coated our yard with the fat frog fountain and that shitty little smug-faced gnome I've been trying to sabotage since I moved in. And then Big Jim's eyeball fell out. Like, fell the fuck out of his head. It rolled onto the grass, and to be honest, Big Jim and I were both taken aback. Dennis, on the other hand, didn't skip a beat, hurling himself toward the rogue eyeball. Dennis is a bloodhound and has the IQ of a dead opossum. Honestly, I've met turkeys with more brain cells. I'd suggested to Big Jim that we oust Dennis because of his weapons-grade incompetence, but Big Jim never listened, intent on keeping a housemate that has zero impulse control and spends 94% of his time licking his balls. Dennis's fangs were within an inch of the eyeball as I snatched it, balancing it on the fence for safekeeping. Big Jim and I shared a look, or sort of a 3/4 of a look, because now obviously he only had a single eyeball. Whilst making a mental note to add this to my petition to get Dennis evicted from our domicile, surely once you've tried to eat your roommate's eyeball, you gots to go. I asked Big Jim if he was all right. He didn't answer. "What the fuck?" said Big Jim as he raised a beefy hand to his head, and that was the last thing I heard him say. Big Jim retired indoors and didn't finish his Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. Again, signs. He spent the next few days in the basement of our house where the PBR fridge is, and also the freezer with shitloads of meat in it. Then he didn't eat. Not one of the delicious ducks or deer he lovingly shot in the face. Things seemed even more severe when he missed the monster truck show he'd been crowing about for weeks. I tried to reason with him, tried to get him to eat a part of a banana. I took care of the moldy bits because he's picky about those. Some of the Doritos I'd helped myself to, and even some of idiot Dennis's kibble. Nothing. Then the pacing started. Big Jim started to traverse the periphery of the basement, shaking his head to a melancholy tune like the sloth bear at the Woodland Park Zoo. Initially, I assumed Big Jim was trying to wear a circle into the basement for conduit installation, which he's very proficient in. But his one eye was now staring into oblivion, and he'd stopped talking to me, and his drooling became worse than Dennis's, which is really saying something. I'd like to note that during this time, a time of great emotional duress and general uncertainty, Dennis did absolutely nothing except whiz all over the lazy boy and yarf on the carpet. I did my best to clean it up, but really he's not my responsibility. The earlier signs were more subtle, only seen with the hindsight spectacles that Big Jim yearns for after every Tinder date. Before the eyeball extraction, Big Jim started to forget things. He forgot a few appointments, then his wallet, and even his house keys, which he blamed me for because he thinks I'm a giant klepto. Hey, I'm just a fella who likes to build on his hidden collections. Who doesn't enjoy the finer things? He told me that some of his words were stuck, that they'd fused to his tongue. When I offered to orally investigate, I was largely ignored. He became lethargic, a subtlety that perhaps only I would have noticed, seeing as Big Jim has the motivation of a taxidermic sloth. But I know him well, and I saw the difference. He stopped walking Dennis, which had disastrous consequences for the couch cushions. May they rest in peace. The runaway eyeball signified a turning point in our lives. I cached the eyeball in a cookie jar in case he could use it later. But Big Jim was never the same again. None of us were. I hesitate to go on for fear that you'll judge me and not want to hear the rest of my story. However, in the interest of full disclosure, I feel a duty to tell you the truth about everything. You deserve it. My name is Shit Turd, and I'm an American crow. Are you still with me? Crows aren't well liked, you see. We're judged because we're black, because our feathers don't possess the speckled stateliness of a red-tailed hawk's or the bewitching cobalt of a blue jay's, those stupid fuckers. Yeah, we're not as dainty and whimsical as hummingbirds, not as wise as owls, a total misnomer, by the way, and not as adorable as the ham-beast-bellied egg-timer commonly known as a penguin. Crows are harbingers of death and omens, good and bad, according to Big Jim, according to Google. Midnight-winged tricksters associated with mystery, the occult, the unknown, the netherworld, wherever that is. Portland? We make people think of the deceased and super angsty poetry. Admittedly, we don't help the cause when we happily dine on fish guts in a landfill, but hey-ho. So, the truth. My name is Shit Turd, ST for short, and I'm a domesticated crow raised by Big Jim, who taught me the ways of your kind, whom he called mofos. He gave me my floral vocabulary and my indubitably unique name. He taught me to say some mofo words. Because of the aforementioned Tinder misadventures, Big Jim and I spent quality, or rather quantity, time together, and I have an array of tricks under my plume. I know about mofo things like windows and secrets and blow-up dolls. And I'm the rare bird who loves your kind, the ones who walk on two legs and built the things you dreamt of, including the Cheeto. I owe my life to you. As an honorary mofo, I'm here to be utterly honest and tell you what happened to your kind, the thing none of us saw coming. And I'm just going to skip ahead here and read a tiny bit from a chapter that's from the point of view of a Highland cow, with apologies to anybody that is from Scotland or from the bovine community. Chapter 21, Angus, Highland Cow, Strathpether, Scotland. Where the hell is my human? I haven't seen her in weeks. At first I thought it was a wee joke, a wee prank on old Angus, but sure as I shit grass, it's been absolutely ages. I've been standing alone in this bastard field for days. Who's going to bring me my alfalfa cubes? My welly-wearing human, that's who. Soon as she bloody remembers. Poor old Angus, out here in the countryside, waiting and waiting like some sort of ginger-haired poultice. All right, I suppose I'm not totally alone. I'm stuck here on these boring, rolling green hills with Nubbins, the donkey. The weather is absolute shite. I'm bored out of my mind. I'm so bored I've taken up to making wee songs and poems. Here's a cracker. Again with the rain. I hate the rain. Pitter patter, shitty shatter. Where are my alfalfa cubes, you walloping twonk? Nubbins can't do poetry or songs. Nubbins is too busy rolling around in his own shite. I'm a prized Highland cow. Nubbins is a rescue donkey with a mind like a melted haggis. Surely destined to be a wee glue pot. Och, I shouldn't be so rude. He's a wee bit traumatised, our Nubbins. Yesterday, he said he'd seen Farmer Stewart in his jammies chasing a sheep that was wearing a biometric collar. Jings, I told him to stop eating thistles. It's frazzling what's left of his wee pea brain. I stuck my head under the fence to ask Hamish about all this Farmer Stewart gossip. Hamish is a Hebridean sheep, a black wee jobby. Hamish says that he heard Gregor the goose telling Esme, a Scots dumpy hen who sticks her beak in everyone's business, that he saw Farmer Stewart staggering around the dog kennels the other day, said he was blootered. His eyes were bright red. Who knows what the truth is? You can't trust a black sheep. So, Nubbins, that numpty, is going bonkers, and I'm bored of the green hillside and the rain, and the rabbits are absolutely out of control. They bonk day and night, and now there are thousands of the wee bastards. I tried to send the foxes after him, but you know foxes, what like are they? Bunch of absolute arseholes. Can't be trusted. Have you heard them at night? Bloody banshees.
The annual Thurber Prize for American Humor is a significant part of the cultural fabric of Columbus. Honestly, and it brings us national and international attention, and it's so appropriate and significant that we get to honor Thurber in this way every year. It's significant that it is in Columbus now again, and we love that. We love that nationally known writers and humorists come to Columbus for this event every year. I mean, I could just go on and on. It just adds so much, and the work of the Thurber House, the educational programming, teaching young children how to write every year, the summer camp programs that you do, the authors that you bring in every year, that you bring to Columbus, and we get to meet them, we get to hear them talk about their most recent works. And the pinnacle of it really is the Thurber Prize, the annual awarding of the Thurber Prize for American Humor. And when I think about the people that have won it in the past, it's an incredibly amazing group of alumni. And honestly, there's so much potential for the future with this. And the people that will be winning it, not only this year, but on into the future. And it will go on and on forever. So it's a special gem. It's a special pleasure that we get to do this in Columbus.
I think that the Thurber House is one of the coolest places to learn and write and gather with folks when we're able, who really want to feel good about life and explore our imaginations. I've been so delighted that the Thurber House was able to pivot over the course of the last year to have more online programming. Oh, Lori and your team, you've worked so hard to keep us all engaged. From all kinds of author events and writing workshops and education programs, Thurber House just doesn't disappoint. I know this summer there are a series of writing studios and camps for kids. I hope folks will check that out on your website. I really like the studio that's for the older kids. That's pretty awesome. And of course, the Thurber Prize for American Humor is a really, really big deal. I believe it's probably one of the most esteemed recognitions of humor writing in the world. Not just Ohio, not just the United States, but in the world. It really is a Thurber House jewel. The prize, as you know, is coming up pretty quickly, and even though it's a virtual premiere celebrating humor writing and James Thurber's legacy, it is going to be fabulous.
Thank you to all of our incredible sponsors, donors, authors, and friends for helping keep Thurber House alive and kicking.
Except the ghosts.
Yes, except them. Your generous support has given most of us new life during this difficult time. Speaking of life, let's take a peek at our third finalist day in the life, the dynamic Damon Young. After that, we asked our finalists a few of our most burning questions about life as a writer. Let's watch.
Hey y'all, so this is Damon Young, and this is a day in my life. I don't know what the fuck is about to happen. We will see. So this is where the magic happens. There's a MacBook Pro there. There's a garbage can. There are some dishes, some books strewn about. I don't know why I said strewn about. I think to make myself seem smart, I could have just said there's some books laying over there. I had to get all fancy with strewn. What the fuck is a strewn? Also, as you can see, I have some foliage. And I'm gonna take full credit for that being there. I have color coded my books. Oh, drugs. There are lots of drugs right there, which I need because white people. And there are, as you see, color coded books. There's a ball of yarn right there. I don't know what that's doing there. I mean, here are, some pictures of family and also my book cover blown up. That was from a book event where they made like posters and had some people sign them. But mainly, I just want to show you this exposed piping that I have in my office space right now. That is real vibranium, right? And when I was growing up and you had exposed pipes in your house, that meant you also probably had roaches. But today, it's a sign that you're on some fancy bougie shit. So, I have sold out. So I'm showing you this because this is where I go when I want snacks. And as you can see, I mean, there are a lot of spices here. There's some rice. There is some salt, some olive oil. Yeah, this is not a very exciting or sexy place in the house, but it's a place that, I appreciate the jars. I appreciate how we have things in jars. We have popcorn that looks like some bran flakes. That also looks like some sort of fig leaf situation, and I'm all about the fig leaf situations now. Here's a water cooler thing because I need to hydrate. I mean, sitting on my ass and writing all day is very hard work, and I get very sweaty sometimes, and so I need to stay refreshed and stay hydrated to keep myself from passing out or getting headaches or whatever. Also, here's a little pantry area with a bunch of fruit, which also helps to keep me hydrated. And hydration is important for writers because again, I mean, working them hands and flicking them wrists and so yeah, I mean, this is it. This is my life. I hope you all were as riveted and as excited watching this as I was making this video, because I tried to show you the most exciting and riveting aspects of my life. I don't leave the house. I am immunocompromised, so I'm taking COVID as seriously as I did back in March. I am vaccinated, but I'm Black, so I don't really trust it. But anyway, thank you. Also, wanted to give a shout out to my man, Mark LaVon Hill. I got the sweatshirt from his store, Uncle Bobby's in Philadelphia. Shout out to Mark. But yeah, I hope you all had a great time. I know that I had a lot of fun making this ridiculous fucking video. All right. Hello. So I'm going to read two things, actually. The first is an excerpt from the introduction, which is titled "Living While Black is an Extreme Sport." And I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs, and then I'm going to read one line from another part of the book. So here we go. Every New Year's Day, hundreds of people gather together on the banks of the Monongahela, a 130-mile-long river that begins in Fairmont, West Virginia, runs along a stretch of factories, steel mills, and power plants through the Mon Valley, and flows to Pittsburgh, where it converges with the Allegheny River of Point State Park to form the Ohio River. Once there, these people strip and dive in. New Year's Day, as you probably know, occurs in January. And the average temperature in Pittsburgh then hovers somewhere between hold my beer and fuck this shit. Which means that they're usually splashing butt-ass naked in the Appalachian slush puppy. They call themselves the Polar Bear Club in their annual dive, the Polar Bear Plunge. Perhaps, while reading that paragraph, an image of a polar bear plunger plopped into your head. Without knowing anything about you, I am certain that the bare-chested, shivering, and possibly inebriated person you envision happened to be white. And not just because whiteness is such the American default that has even colonized our imaginations, but because willingly exposing yourself to frostbite, hypothermia, and a trillion-year half-life Mon Valley isotopes floating downstream is about as that's some white people shit as that's some white people shit gets. Only someone so comfortably ensconced in privilege that they need to find ways to fabricate closeness to death to feel alive will leave their bed and blankets and house and clothes and city and the tens of thousands of years of civilization devoted to find more efficient ways to protect us from the elements in the dead of winter that belly flop in a billion gallons of toxic ice. It's so white that if you happen to be a non-white member of the Polar Bear Club, and it doesn't matter if you're Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Shaka Khan, or Shaka Zulu, you become, from the time you remove your clothes to the time you climb back out of the water, white by osmosis. All right, that's the first part. Okay, now the second thing I want to read is it's just one line. It's my favorite line in the book, and it's a line it's a line from a chapter titled "Banging Over Bacon." That's about a time about 8 or 9 years ago where I almost got in a fight at this all-night breakfast buffet over a plate of bacon. Okay, but this is just one line from that. When drunk, I usually eat how rabbits fuck. Angry, sweaty, and looking over my shoulder for falcons. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Lathan, Executive Director of Thurber House, and today we are talking with our finalists for the 2020 Thurber Prize for American Humor. First question: what is the best and worst writing advice you've ever received?
You know, it's funny. I haven't really received bad advice. I've received advice from bad people. Okay. Okay, because I remember once in a barbershop, a guy told me, when he heard that I was a blogger, he was like, "Oh, you need to follow your dreams." And later on, this guy got accused of murder and is now doing life in prison. So again, I've gotten good advice from murderers, okay, but I haven't really gotten any bad writing advice. People have been really supportive of this career choice and have told me just to do it, to follow what you want to do. I'd say the best advice has probably been to read. And that's advice that I do tell young writers when I get an opportunity to speak in front of them, is to read as much as possible, be as voracious as you can when it comes to literature, books, and even tweets, anything that you could possibly read. And that is the single best way to improve your writing.
The best writing advice I ever got was from an editor named Dave Bolt at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I had submitted an article about childbirth. And he came back and all he said was, "Make it funnier." And I did. At least I tried to. And that's pretty much always been good advice for me. Make it funnier, which is hard to follow, but it's usually good advice with humor writing. Worst advice, I don't know. I've gotten a lot of terrible suggestions. I would go back to high school, and I was kind of a wise ass in high school, and I would try both in writing and in speech to crack up my classmates. And a couple of times I was told by teachers, "That's very funny, but you can't joke your way through life," which turns out to be inaccurate. You can, in fact, joke your way through life, because that's been pretty much my career.
Well, writers get a lot of advice. I would say the best advice I have received is probably the most succinct and most sort of sparkling is in its simplicity. It's from my husband, and he is not a writer, but he is a creative, and he says, just have fun with it. And if a book is a distillation of energy, then I think it matters what you put into it. And so that helps to kind of like block everything else out. And certainly for humor writing, have fun. We sometimes forget to do that, right? And then the worst, gosh, I would say anything that's too prescriptive or too draconian, sort of the old kill your darlings. That really depresses me and bums me out. And yeah, and I'm not a big fan of also, you need to get a thicker skin. Ew. Ew. I think that as writers, maybe we need to be a bit more like cheesecloths and kind of just let things flow through us and keep the good bits.
Okay, great. Question number 2. What was the funniest or nastiest rejection you have received for your work?
Man, when you write a humor column in a newspaper, you get a lot of negative reaction. People don't like humor in their newspapers. I mean, some people don't. I call them the humor impaired. The idea that something in the newspaper is not literally true really troubles some people, and the idea that it might be meant to be entertaining is completely foreign to them. So I wrote a lot of things that were not accurate in my newspaper column. Most of my newspaper column was lies, but I assumed people would get the joke. So I would write like, when Abraham Lincoln invented the electric light bulb, and then I would go on, it's like a throwaway joke. And I would get mail, just a lot of mail from people who were really unhappy that I had written that what to them was a flagrantly untrue statement. And I would get letters correcting me. And often the letters would be like, "For your information, Mr. Barry, Abraham Lincoln did not invent the electric light bulb. The electric light bulb was invented by Benjamin Franklin. And you should do better research," and that kind of, so I always enjoyed that.
Well, not to brag, but I believe I am the reigning queen of rejection. I've sort of made a professional
career out of it up until now. um, yeah, I as a writer, I think if you're not getting rejected a lot, you're probably not putting yourself out there. And for me, I've had a lot of writing rejections, but before I was a writer, I was a struggling actress, and there were a lot of rejections there. And I would say some of the worst were, I used to get, well, I mean, when I very rarely got cast in anything, I would be cast as in something and then get cut, and they would say it was because I was too pale. So I guess I was sort of just this like little pale orb wandering around the screen, and that was unacceptable. But the very worst rejections were that, you know, being so pale, I started to get sent out to play the role of dead bodies. And the saddest part about that was that I never got cast as one. So I wasn't even good enough to play a stiff. And that feels like a really terrible rejection that, you know, yeah. I mean, I think they missed out. I think I would have saved them a fortune on talcum powder, you know?
I mean, the funniest reject, or the nastiest rejection, and also the funniest, is probably when I was in college, and there was a girl on campus that who I liked, and in order to impress her, I started writing poetry. And by writing poetry, I mean I would go to the original hip hop lyrics archive on the internet. I would find some really obscure rap lyrics. I would cut and paste them, and then I would send them to her as a poem. You know, and the first time I did this, I titled it "From Me to You." I felt like the title itself was trying to give myself an alibi for a crime she didn't even know I was committing, and so I sent her this plagiarized rap verse, and she wasn't a hip hop ish, so she didn't recognize it or know that it was plagiarized. And she read it and she responded back and she said, "Oh, this is cute." And that was it. No, it didn't lead to anything else. It didn't, lead to any sparks. It wasn't what I had in mind when I was thinking of, of committing this crime. It was just, oh, this was nice, this was cute, and then that was that. So that wasn't a nasty rejection, but it was more of like a very anticlimactic. I had seen too many teen movies and it just didn't go the way I envisioned it going.
Okay, so the third question, what is one question you wish someone would ask, but no one ever does?
Oh, so I'm somebody who, a lot of weird things happen to me, which is amazing as a humor writer. It's probably why I'm a humor writer, is a lot of really strange things happen. So I love to be asked, like, what's a weird thing that has happened to you? And I mean, where do you even start? But I do often, something that pops into my mind, something that happened to me at a writing conference. I was at a pretty prestigious writing conference, and I attended a humor panel, comedy panel I walked into the room and it was packed. There were no seats anywhere. So I sat on the floor, just decided, okay, I'll sit here cross-legged. And this woman walked in with this big backpack. She walked in, looked around, kind of humming and hawing, and she couldn't find a seat either. So she sat down in my lap. Sat in my lap, this random woman, I didn't know who she was, and she didn't seem to notice. And the weirdest part of the story too is that I think it was a combination of shock, and also my parents are British, so I was raised kind of not to make a fuss of things. And so I said nothing. I didn't say anything. I just sat and I peered over the top of her backpack, and I remember the woman sitting next to me looked at me and I just and I let her sit there. So I love to talk about those weird things. There's so many. So many.
Oh, this is a really good one. I had to think really long and hard about this. Like, what question am I never asked? And so I do all these book talks, and I'm available to emails, and I'm on panels and stuff. And white people never ask me about race and racism in America. Like I never get that question when I'm in line at Whole Foods. I never get that email to me. No one ever hits me up randomly on Instagram or Twitter and DMs me that question. No one sends like a carrier pigeon with that question, and the pigeon leaves it at my doorstep and makes me answer. Like I wish more white people would just get the courage to ask me this question, which they have never, ever, literally never asked me.
I guess the question that no one ever asked me is, Dave, with your looks, how come you're not a famous movie star? I don't know why, but nobody ever asked me that question. I wish somebody would. And the answer is, because frankly, I want to preserve my privacy.
The best thing about winning the Thurber Prize is, of course, you get this beautiful glass or crystal object, and with the right lighting, you can display it prominently enough that at dinner parties, people will have no choice but to say, hey, what is that? And then you can say proudly, I won the Thurber Prize for American humor. And the worst part is that later in the dinner, when you inevitably try to make a joke and it doesn't land, you will see everybody's eyes drift towards the prize.
What it's like to be a finalist and a semi-finalist. I mean, is there a bigger honor in the field of humor? There really isn't. And to get and go, and I've been able to meet all of these people, and I got to meet Alan Zweibel, who won, and he took my $5,000 check. That was awesome. I did not even cry. I didn't cry because the experience was so amazing.
It was a great honor. I wear it like a badge to this very day. I come from television and movies and stage plays. That's what I primarily write. And then I started writing prose. And in the world that I usually exist in, to not only be published, but to get the Thurber Prize for it, and to be in the company of those people that you've also awarded, given the award to, it sets me apart from everybody else that I usually deal with. And it's an incredible honor to have been given an award. When we came to Columbus, I had to give a speech, I guess, shortly after I won the prize, and they took me through the Thurber House, and I saw the pictures of all Thurber winners and Thurber's contemporaries, and they took my picture, and to know that it's hanging there somewhere, I'm incredibly honored by that.
It was absolutely one of the great days of my life to win that prize. It is the only, when you write funny things, you're just so used to being sort of the second class literary citizen sometimes, because people have a lot of envy for funny writers, and especially in the academy. I think all great works of literature have very obvious and strong elements of comedy in them. From Moby Dick to Faulkner, you can find it. It gets squeezed out in high school and college English classes too often. Less so these days, but back when I was growing up in the early 1900s, it definitely was the case. And so I knew that I just had stopped trying to win sort of any kind of acclaim from the literary establishment. Because I realized to write the kind of stuff I needed to write, I just needed to be funny. Thurber had the benefit of being attached to the New Yorker, and obviously that has a lot of credibility to it and a lot of heft. But I didn't have anything like that. And so when I heard about the Thurber Prize, I was like, it just felt like these were my people. It was like, these people get it. And so to be nominated and to be a finalist was so exciting. It was just it's such a confirmation of something that I had believed about humor my whole life. And then to finally sort of be in that club, just to be nominated. And so to win the prize, it felt like I was finally being invited into the one club that I wanted to be a member of.
Yes, I will just say first and foremost that winning the Thurber was definitely the highlight of my writing career. When I found out that I was a finalist, there was some buzz in the press about the fact that no woman had ever received the award for humor. And I thought, well, if no woman has won this thing yet, I've got to win, because at some point they've really got to break down and, nominate a woman, give it to a woman. And then I learned that all 3 finalists that year were in fact women. So that set me back a little bit. But I did win, which was amazing. And the Thurber Prize led to lots of marvelous things. First, I got home and my hometown paper, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, called me in a large headline, "The funniest woman in America," which my husband was scratching his head, bewildered over that one. And then I got to spend 2 nights in the Thurber House, in that haunted attic, challenging my cowardice. And that was terrific as well.
It's important that humorists carve out our little area because so rarely are we in like the mainstream National Book Awards and, these things that are, the Oscars of books kind of thing. It's the same way that comedies are not nominated for Best Picture sort of thing. They're not seen as serious enough to be in that category. And I feel like the Thurber House does a great job of carrying on that legacy of saying, no, wait a minute, hold on. It is just as hard to write humor as any other form. And more often than not, you're writing draft after draft after draft because it doesn't translate on the page. And so when you're able to, when people are able to really, the David Sedaris's and the Thurbers of the world are able to hit that sweet spot, it's to be admired and it's to be enjoyed and celebrated. And, thank God that the Thurber House exists to celebrate them.
Being a finalist for the Thurber Prize is such a great honor. In the humor world, there really aren't awards for comedy writing that carry the weight of the Thurber Prize. This is it. It's the comedy writing seal of approval. And the year I was a finalist was a historic year because it was the first time in history that 3 humorists were all female who were finalists for the prize. Julie Schumacher with her brilliant novel, Dear Committee Members, Ross Chass with Can We Please Talk About Something More Pleasant? And my book, I See You Made an Effort. Just being in that company was a thrill, and it was so great to see women dominating the field. And I'm so excited for this year's finalists and for the lucky winner.
It was a great thrill. Thurber was one of my early literary heroes. When I first started writing, in fact, some of my teachers, a couple times, teachers pointed me to Thurber and said, if you have not read Thurber, run, do not walk. And so I began to read Thurber, and I didn't know why they had recommended Thurber to me, and I read him to figure out what it was they were seeing in my work. And in hindsight, I would say it was a certain tendency toward understatement. That would be my brand of humor, and I think Thurber's too. Plus a love of words, a love of language, and the way words bounce off each other.
Oh, it was a thrill. Just to get nominated for anything is a thrill, but particularly Thurber, because I'm a descendant or disciple of Thurber. When I was 7 years old, I started to trace his drawings, and from there became, a cartoonist, my own work. So it was just really exciting, and I love telling people that I was a Thurber Prize finalist because it's a big deal to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2020 Thurber Prize for American Humor winner, Mr. Damon Young.
This was a giant ruse that apparently a lot of people were in on, including books. Everyone. Wow, this is a lot. There's a lot to take in. And I'm a practical joker. Like, my wife knows that whenever there's like a holiday or like an event, I try to prank her with gifts because she doesn't accept them any other way. So I prank her with them. So they got me. I'm grateful, I'm humbled, overjoyed to win. It's funny, this is happening a day that Paul Mooney, who is one of my favorite comedians, passed away. And I wrote a thing about him on Facebook about how the best comedy is sticky, where it grapples you, it sticks to you, it grips you, it infests you, it permeates you. And Paul Mooney's legacy, I think, is that he was extremely sticky. And I would hope that my work, eventually has that same sort of impact on people. And it's an honor to be, recognized for trying to make people laugh, for trying to mine my trauma for humor and people finding some sort of appreciation for it. So yeah, thank you to the rest of the nominees too. Who wrote tremendous books. To all the judges, to God. I'm supposed to thank God in these situations because I'm Black and Black people can't win awards without accepting God. So without thanking God. So thank you, God, for everything, including this money. My wife, Alicia, my children, my dad, my mother-in-law. I'm just thanking the people that are here. My cousins, Sarah Honey, Young, City of Asylum, bookstore, cameraman in the back, the grip. Is there a grip? Is there a grip here? Okay, grip. So everybody who's here, and again, just it's a tremendous honor, and thank you.